Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Goodwin with the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. Welcome to this week's History is Lunch program. We're in our home, the Museum of Mississippi History and Mississippi Civil Rights Museum's Craig H. Nielsen Auditorium. And we're streaming live on both Facebook and YouTube, where these videos are available to watch anytime afterwards. And if you've not already done so, please silence your cell phone. The traveling exhibit Atomic Alert, Confronting the Bomb in the New Atomic Age, has opened upstairs. It delves into the history of the Federal Civil Defense Administration, which was established to prepare Americans for the dangers of the atomic age. And next week's History is Lunch is the first of two that we'll have in conjunction with that exhibit, when author and historian David Allen Burke will be with us to present Atomic Testing in Mississippi. So come back for that. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Di Rushing to present The Life and Death of Mississippi's First Winery. Rushing lives in Colorado now, but was back as a panelist at the Mississippi Book Festival. We're happy to have her with us. Di Rushing earned her BA in English from Mississippi State University. She's the author of two books, The Delta in the Rearview Mirror, The Life and Death of Mississippi's First Winery, and House Specialties of Top of the Cellar Tea Room. Help me welcome Di Rushing.
Really appreciate your coming today. Okay, can you hear me now? No, still? Y'all can, but you don't think it's on the... Are we good, Chris? We're good, okay. I was a teacher for 20 years, so I'll use my teacher voice, okay? As you know, my name is Di Rushing. I have recently written a book called The Delta in the Rearview Mirror, which was published by University Press of Mississippi, which I'm so honored and privileged that they picked the book up and decided to go with it. So I owe them a great deal. I don't know if many of you have been to the winery that we opened in 1977. I suspect quite a few of you have. So I'm going to give you a little bit about the history of the Winery Rushing. My husband Sam and I graduated from Mississippi State in 1976. At that time, we moved back to the family farm, which was located at Merigold, Mississippi. Merigold is about 3 miles east of Cleveland, Mississippi, so that gives you a little bit of a context about where we were located. We were on the road between Merigold and Drew, but we were in Bolivar County, right there on the line. So in 1977, we found ourselves with 350 acres, which is not enough to do cotton and beans with. As you know, that takes large acreage. And we were exploring other ways that we thought we could make a living on such a small acreage. So we started doing a lot of research. At that time, the year before, Mississippi State University had begun their enology program. Enology meaning, of course, winemaking. They had just done their curriculum with the enology department. We reached out to them to see if there was any interest in their helping us to establish the first winery, because we knew with growing the grapes with the muscadine that we used, that we could make that acreage go a lot further, and it did. The 1 acre of muscadines produced monetarily wise, about as much as 800 to 1,000 acres of your traditional crops. So we had to go with something that we could make work on the farm. So in 1977, with the help of Mississippi State University, we opened the first winery in the state of Mississippi. The first, maybe I should say legal winery in the state of Mississippi, because there were plenty of other people who came in and offered us their age-old recipes, none of which were very good, I'm going to be honest with you. So we started the winery in 1977. I was still working at Delta State at the time because we were fresh out of college. We had no idea what we were going to do with our lives. When we started it, we were 23 years old. That gives you a sense of how totally inexperienced we were, and not very savvy about how the business world works. Fortunately, the Delta was very supportive of us. They were excited about having the first winery in their area, and they were also excited about alternative crops for people who didn't quite have all of the big acreage that everybody had in the Delta at that time. There was also when corporations were starting to come in and buy up a lot of the lands, and we were, of course, we're trying to hold on tight to all of that acreage. So we got a tremendous amount of support. We started the winery, and after a few years, we planted 33 acres of muscadines, which were very, very productive within just a couple of years. So about 2 years later, we were able to do our first vintage Merigold wine, Winery Rushing wine. So we started that, and about 2 years after that, we won some national awards. We had Mississippi State said, you need to go up and to New York and enter this Wineries Unlimited competition. We said, okay, whatever. So we did, and we ended up winning 2 awards that year and 6 more over the following 3 years, which was very exciting. You know how you have to have a little validation sometimes. So that kind of gave us the validation that we needed to keep going and try to improve. Not long after that, we opened my little restaurant, which was called Top of the Cellar Tea Room. Top of the Cellar was a wonderful little place. I've had several people since I've been here since Saturday say that they've eaten there at the tea room. It was a little, beautiful little antique, basically a sharecropper's house that we had moved onto the place, but had the old wavy windows and a lot of character, a lot of charm. So we redid that into the tea room. You could come to the tea room, and every day you would have a choice of only 2 things. And I used to worry about that, but you know, the older I get, the more I realize less choice is a lot easier in a lot of ways than opening a menu with 10 pages or something. So it worked out beautifully. So we had a choice of 2 things. It was basically reservation only, and we just had people from all over the Mid-South who would come. The typical day during that time was to come to the winery, have lunch at the tea room, which was right by the winery, of course, and then go into the winery and have a wine tour with our tour guides. And I'm getting back to one of the tour guides in just a moment. But you would get a tour of the winery and then drive over to the vineyard and look around, pick a few grapes if you wanted to. And then people would usually around 2 end up at McCarty's Pottery, which was great because that's when Lee McCarty was getting up from his nap. And he was ready to tell you all kind of stories. So it was just kind of a day in Merigold, to be honest with you, the whole concept. And we started getting really good recognition from all over the country. A lot of newspaper articles, a lot of press, a lot of magazines and TV. It was quite a heady, sexy experience, I'll be honest with you. It was just something totally new to us, having grown up, as both my husband and I did, in Greenville, and having graduated from Greenville High School together in the early 70s. So everything was going well. We had 2 children during that time, a little girl, my daughter Lizzie, who is now a human rights lawyer for the International Red Cross in Geneva, Switzerland. Her specialty is refugee law. And then our son, who is a techie, and don't ask me what he does because he tells me, and I have no idea what he does. He still lives in Colorado, so we get to see him quite often. We see both of them more often than you would think. So when our children were young, Matt was 5 at that time, Lizzie was 8 at that time, we came home from the hunting club that we were members of, Merigold Hunting Club, and we found our roof shot in of our house. We didn't have any grand, glorious house, but it had beautiful vaulted ceilings. And we came in. The first thing we saw on the front porch before we came in, however, was our little dog, whose name was Socks. And she had been shot through the throat and was lying there bleeding on the porch. Of course, we decided we needed to figure out what was this. You know, a lot of times hunters will accidentally shoot animals. Our first thought wasn't that it was a deliberate thing. We scooped her up. We took her, to the vet, and she lived a couple of days, but they were unable to save her. So it was a very traumatic thing. We didn't even go in the house at that point. At that point, we just took socks to the vet immediately. And then when we got back that night and went into the house, we saw that they had also shot through the vaulted ceilings, the cathedral ceilings of our living room. There was plaster all over the place. So we knew then that it was certainly a deliberate act. We started kind of looking around, asking around the neighborhood, asking around the community if they knew of anyone who had been out there to do that. We finally found out that there was a guy, a good friend of ours, who had driven down the road, and he said, yes, I saw Ray Russell's car at around midnight that night. And he said, but we didn't really think, he said, but I didn't really think anything about it because Ray works at the winery. He was our tour guide at that time. He had a very good job there. He would give the tours and help on the bottling line and so forth from time to time. So we approached Ray about it the following Monday when he came in. At first he denied it. And then finally he said, well, I was out there, but I didn't shoot up your house. You know, it was his tail was disintegrating in front of our eyes. So Sam said, well, you're fired. We had found out by that time that he was actually out there at midnight he was selling illegal drugs in the parking lot of the winery. That was their rendezvous point, we learned from several citizens in the area. That was where he would meet his potential customers and they would do all that. When I say this was about one football field, about 100 yards from our home, where we were living with our small children. We didn't know this was going on. We're not usually up in the middle of the night. So we fired him. Sam fired him. I didn't have anything to do with that really because I was very frightened. So Sam fired him. We didn't hear anything from him for a few weeks. And then one morning, on the morning of May 4th of that same year, which was 1990, we came into I was at the house getting the kids ready for school, and I picked up the phone. You know, that was back when you had extensions, you know, so I could hear what Sam was saying, and I was hearing him talking to someone, an older guy, about our wine was gone. Our wine was going down the drain. So I loaded the kids up in the car. We drove the 100 yards to the winery, and someone had broken in the night before, gone down to the cellar where we had huge stainless steel vats holding 3,000 gallons of wine. We had some oak barrels down there as well. And Sam had gone in and saw that there was a little bit of vandalism, not a lot, until he went, but he had overpowered by the scent of red wine. He went to the basement, and it was literally knee-deep in wine going down the drain, which went directly out into the Sunflower River about 80 yards downhill from the winery. Later, we had people say you could literally see the river literally ran red. You could see the red wine going down the river. He destroyed every ounce of wine we had in the cellar in one night. Then he went over to my tea room. He destroyed everything in the tea room. He destroyed every antique pane of glass with a hammer. He crushed everything in there, turned the tables over, did all of these things. That was when I had the sense for the first time, and this has been the takeaway for some people they've shared with me, that we really don't have any control in events, or at least not the control that we think we have. It was a very large epiphany for me because I thought we had this great life. We had control. We were able to plan our day and be very confident that it would go down the way we thought. We were so happy. My business was wonderful. Sam loved what he was doing. I loved what I was doing. The support of the area was fabulous. But that was the moment that we realized life isn't predictable. We called the sheriff that day. The sheriff of Bolivar County. He came to the place. He started questioning. And he looked around, and I remember one of the first questions he said is, "Who's mad at you? This is not a random vandalism. Who's mad at you?" And so Ray's name didn't really come up right at first. We were, nobody, we're wonderful people. Who in the world would be mad at us? Nobody, And so then as he asked questions, we thought, yeah, I bet that's what this is about. They went over to Ray's house. They searched. They got permission to go in his house. They said when they opened that door, it was also very strong with the scent of red wine. They found his blue jeans on the floor, soaked in red wine. They found a hammer with shards of glass stuck in the handle of the hammer. But the most chilling thing that they found when they searched Ray's house was a drawer full of pet collars, 5 of whom belonged to our dogs, or 4 of whom had belonged to our dogs who had gone missing over the past year. We would come home and never see the dog again. So he had their collars. In other words, we knew what happened to those dogs. We don't know how it went down, but we knew what happened, generally. They arrested Ray. That night, he was released on bail. He lived literally less than a quarter of a mile from us. We were on one side of the Sunflower River, and Ray and his family were on the other side of the Sunflower River. Sometimes we could hear them partying from our front porch. It was that close. So the thought that he was released at that time and free to do his thing, Sam and I were just horrified. We just didn't really know what we were going to do. At that time, the community started really helping us. We came in about 3 days after the break-in and found a pallet of lumber and windows and nails and everything we would need to rebuild the tea room. We don't know to this day who did that, who paid for it. We would find cash stuck in funny little places around the winery and the tea room. The community wanted us to get back on our feet, and they wanted us to do it well. We didn't have wine to sell except what was bottled and in the warehouse. The package stores in Mississippi would say, we'll sell what you can give us, and we will be happy to pay for future orders when you get back on your feet. This is what Mississippians do. We appreciated it. We didn't take up that particular offer, but we did indeed get back on our feet. Within a week and a half, the tea room was back on track. I was booked solid for months ahead sometimes because, you know, sometimes you have to almost lose something before you realize how much you value it. And it was kind of that kind of a case. Wine-wise, we were not in good shape. We decided not to ship out any more wine to liquor stores because we needed to get the retail price for that wine rather than the wholesale price because we were trying to survive. During that time, we looked nothing but towards the future. Rebuilding the tea room, Sam started designing a new wine label based on the blues legends of the Delta. He also was working on a sparkling wine. By that time, we had acres of berries, blueberries, blackberries, plums, cherries, all kind of things that we were using at the tea room, but we would also have people come and pick a bucket. We were just really scrambling to stay afloat during this time because our insurance covered nothing that happened to us. We had fire insurance, that was it. There was no fire. So we were really, we still had a huge loan. As Bruce Springsteen says, we had debts no honest person can pay. And we did. But we managed. We got through it with the help of the community. That fall, school started. We were all looking forward to getting the kids back into the routine. About a week after school started, I pulled out of my road. The Russell's driveway was about a quarter of a mile or eighth of a mile down from that. And I noticed Ray was parked at the end of his driveway, or at the end of his road. I pulled out. He pulled behind me and started playing this stalking game. He would pull in front of me and go 5 miles an hour. And so I would stop. This was a road, a 3-mile stretch with one other house on it. He would pull in front and stop or slow down, and I was very frightened. Usually this was when I went to pick up the kids in the afternoon, so they were not with me, which was good. And then I would try to go around him, and he would try to run me off the road. And, you know, he had his hair blowing. He was just what you call a good old redneck is what Ray Russell was. Had a cigarette hanging out his mouth half the time and all this going on. It was very scary. And then he would get in front of me and then take off. So that happened quite a few times over that summer. Finally, I told Sam one day, I called him after he had done it, and I said, Sam, I want you to bring your pistol down to the house and show me how to shoot. I said, I'm not going to be a sitting target anymore. I had never shot anything except when I shot at a mouse one time in the house. And I missed and tore up the floorboard, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, so Sam was not happy about it, but he showed me how to shoot a pistol, and so I was pretty good. After that, when the next time he stalked me, I showed him, what I had. So after that, he didn't do that anymore. What he did instead was start parking at our kids' school in Cleveland at the end of that drive and just kind of stare us down. That was his modus operandi. You can imagine how frightening this was, how terrifying this was. And we kept holding on to the prospect that the trial, which was due to come up in December, would take care of this. Because the sheriff kept saying, this is a slam dunk, don't worry about it. Don't even need a lawyer, don't need to let the DA handle it, the Bolivar County DA, which we did. He said, don't worry about it. And we were just busy surviving at that point. We weren't we were very naive. There's just no other word for it. Naive and clueless as to what the justice system was capable of pulling. So during that time, I wrote my cookbook. I have a copy of it over here because I just reprinted it. So those are for sale at Lemuria and also here at the museum. And also other wonderful bookstores in the state, but I know we're in Jackson. So I made the cookbook. It came out on November the 15th. I ordered 6,000 copies. It was self-published, and all the copies were gone within the first 6 months. That was in early November. In December, the trial was held. Sam and I were sequestered, so we don't really know what went down during we never were able to get a copy of the transcript after we moved to Colorado. We tried to on multiple occasions. And they said it had been destroyed in a fire, and there was no fire. We don't know what that's all about. It was just said, okay, we'll put that behind us. We're in a different place. But anyway, at the trial, it was a 2-day trial. The whole trial became not about what happened, but rather the haves versus the have-nots, which was hilarious because we were dead broke at this time. But that's how they posed it, were the haves versus the have-nots. During that time, Ray confessed to breaking into the winery during the trial, to going downstairs, releasing all of the wine, to go into the tea room, destroying everything over there, I don't think the dogs came up, so I don't want to put anything about that in there. I don't think that came up. The only thing he would not confess to was the theft of $401 from the cash register. Turns out that's the only thing he was charged with. Not destroying a business, not stalking us, not anything. Charged with one count of $401 from the cash register. His defense was that we hired him to come in and do all of those things for the insurance. Oops, forgot to take out that policy first. Nothing. We didn't get a penny from the insurance people. But that was his spiel. That was his story. And unfortunately, the jury believed him. They found him not guilty. I remember I was sitting in the courtroom when they came back, and I was dressed to a T. If I'd known they were going to do the economic angle, I certainly wouldn't have done that. But I was dressed, and I was mad. I was defensive. Of course I was defensive. My entire life had been pulled out, ripped out from under us. And Sam was too, I'm sure. Although we weren't able to see each other's testimony, we're not sure. So when they came back with the not guilty verdict, I was just sitting in the chairs and say, well, if they believed him, and if he did nothing wrong, then did we do something wrong? And if so, what the heck was it that we did wrong in this? So it was a very baffling thing. And a very depressing thing. And I'm going to be honest, at that point, I called my doctor friend and I got on antidepressants, and it took me a long time to get off of them. Antidepressants and sleeping pills. I have one chapter in my book that's one paragraph long, and it's about that time between the trial and the time the day we made the decision to leave. We didn't have a choice. That's one paragraph because I said I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything about that week. I don't remember if I went to work. I don't think I did anything except lie in bed kind of in shock. We were all very surprised. So anyway, 1 week after the trial, I was getting the kids ready for school. We were going up to Memphis for a medical appointment that I had up there. And Sam and I had just talked the night before about what are we going to do now? This guy lives right across the river, and what's he going to do? You know, we're just sitting ducks. We had some interesting offers, as you can imagine, from people around the Delta. One very well connected farmer over in Lake Village called one night. It was Christmas Eve. He said, I can take care of that boy. You don't have to worry about him. And he meant it. And Sam said, wait a minute, what do you mean you can take care of him? He says, we're looking forward to it. It's going to be we got this, you know. And Sam said, no, back up the truck. That's not what we want to do. We're not in this to hurt anybody or anything like that. It was a terrible, terrible night to have somebody call you on Christmas Eve and have to ask them to stand down. You know, you can imagine. But anyway, that week was hellacious enough. But that morning, about a week after the trial, Sam came in the house, and he was just pale white, ashen. He said, Di, I just found Sassy. Sassy was our black lab puppy that we had bought after our other dogs had been killed. And he said, I just found Sassy in our trash can. She's been shot through the heart. So he was starting all over again. Our good friend at the little store there in Merigold said he had heard Ray there the night before talking about how the Rushing kids were next. So we drove to Memphis. Sam and I weren't saying anything to each other on the trip. I was trying to figure out how I was going to tell my children that their fourth dog had been murdered by this man. Trying to figure out a lot of things. And then we were going up 61. We passed the crossroads at Clarksdale and all these things. And all of a sudden it just popped out of my mouth. Sam, we're moving. We're not staying here. I'm not going to swap licks with rednecks for the rest of my life. That is not how I envision my life. And I could tell Sam wasn't saying anything. We've been married 51 years now. But at that point, we'd been married a long time, probably 20-something. And I could see the wheels in his brain working, He was planning something, and I doubt he even knew what he was planning. But he knew we couldn't be a sitting target for this boy and his father, both of whom were equally nefarious characters. So I said, we're moving, and he looked at me like, what are you talking about? I said, we can't stay without someone getting killed. And I don't want that to happen. I don't on either side. I don't want that to happen. So he said, okay. So the next day we announced that we were closing the winery and the tea room. I took reservations up until Christmas Eve day. There's a lot in my book about the tea room and the people that worked for me. When we closed, it was not just us losing our livelihood. We had the same people working for us from the day we started till the day we closed 17 years later. So they were losing their livelihood. It was really a sad, sad thing to wrap your brain around, but we really didn't have a choice. McCarty offered to buy my tea room, which was wonderful. Again, the community came in and supported us and started writing letters to the editor and letters to us from people we didn't even know existed. And while that was very gratifying, of course, it was not the solution. We got a letter from a lawyer we had a lot to deal with. We got a letter from a lawyer who said, y'all are just throwing in the towel. You don't run away from your problems. That's not how you handle things. Well, I didn't feel like we were running away from our problems. I felt like we were preventing worse problems. To me, running and prevention are two different things. we truly felt like as though we did not have a choice. And I think we made the right decision despite how hard it was. So we ran the winery, ran the tea room, loaded up our trucks, all of our furniture, as much as we could in a couple of U-Hauls, and moved to Ouray, Colorado. Ouray is located in southwest Colorado. It's about 70 miles north of Durango. We're right across the mountain from Telluride. As a crow flies, we're about 14 miles from Telluride. But as you drive, it's more like 50 because you have to go around that range. But just to give you a sense of where we landed. Why did we go there? Because at that time, when that poured out of my mouth, I was thinking, what's the farthest place we can go from here? Of course, that was small thinking. I know that now. But at that time, we had vacationed there. We had camped there, and we had skied at Telluride. So that was, I guess, the reason it popped into my head. We knew nobody there except one girl who lived in Telluride with whom we had gone to Mississippi State earlier. She kind of helped us find a place to live at first. We landed in a little ranching community called Norwood at first. First day of school, I take my kids in. I'm from the Delta. They had their hair fixed. We had our shoes polished. I had a big old bow in the back of my hair. And they looked at me like, who in the world are you, and why are you moving in the middle of the school year? You can imagine. They all had on Levi's and flannel and cowboy hats, and not in Ouray, but in Norwood. It's a ranching community. And so they thought we looked like somebody from another planet, and we felt like we had landed on another planet. So the secretary asked my daughter, why did y'all decide to move? She was just making conversation. Lizzie said, because there's a bad man after us. She looked at me, oh, you're running from the law. Okay. I get it. Okay, well, let's see how we can move you guys along here, you know. But they turned out being very sweet and very accommodating. I'd never explained it because I didn't know what I was doing myself at that time. I had always had a teaching certificate from Mississippi State because my daddy made me. You know how it was back in those days? In my family, you didn't have a choice of if you went to school. You had a choice of where you went to school. And he wanted me to get something in case this thing with Sam didn't work out. No, he never said that. But, you know, he wanted me to have some tools. I'd forgotten that I had a teaching certificate. But I started substituting there in Norwood. During that time, we did some footwork to see where we really wanted to land permanently, and that turned out to be Ouray. Within a year, I was teaching high school English and psychology at Ouray High School. I taught there for 20 years, and it was wonderful. My biggest class was like 24 kids, very respectful. They thought I talked funny, but other than that, we got along real well. It was a great career. Sam had Susan Ford from Jackson here, the glass blower. I'm sure some of you know who Susan Ford is. She showed Sam how to blow glass before we left. He wanted to do it as a hobby. So Sam opened a glass blowing studio there in Ouray. We had that business for 27 years, very successful. Lee McCarty helped us start making pottery there at the shop. So we started a Ouray Glassworks and Pottery Company. We sold that business 7 years ago to a young little millennial who has run with it. Sam taught her how to blow the glass. I showed her how to do the pottery because I kind of did this in the summer and also after I retired. That was pretty much what I did after I retired from teaching. So it's been a wonderful life there in Colorado. So in about, I would say probably the summer of 2020 when COVID had made its appearance, I was sitting in my house, gaining weight, eating cookies, didn't go anywhere, you know. I thought, you know, I really need to find something better than this to do with my time, so I decided to go up and clean out the attic. So I went upstairs, and I found box after box of things that, they were still sealed from, you know, 1990. 40 years earlier, they were still sealed, and or 30 years earlier. And I unsealed them, and it was all these newspaper articles and awards and photographs and letters from people that I mean, I knew they were up there, kind of, sort of. You know how you have boxes stuck in the back? But I found 4 boxes, the medals we had won for our wines. And so I kind of collected them and carried them down to my dining room table, and I got 14 boxes, one for each year we were in business, and put this article here and this, kind of sorted it that way. And then I just sat at the table and I looked through the articles, and all these memories started coming back as I read the articles about what had happened and how it felt. One memory, of course, segues to the next, and a lot of stuff started coming back. Well, I thought I really do need to make sense of this for my grandchildren. They're going to, excuse me, they're going to see these one day, and they're going to wonder, what the heck is all this about? So I got my laptop and sat at my dining room table and started typing based on the articles. Worked on it probably about 6 months or so, and I said, I showed it to Sam. I said, I wonder if anybody else would be interested in knowing about this, because I knew everything happened so fast there at the end. Even our good customers really didn't have a good sense of what had happened. And so I said, I wonder if there's a story here that other people might be interested in. I sent it to my daughter. I sent it to my son. Said, what do you guys think? And they said, oh, yeah, I think there's a story here. I think you need to be in. I think you need to pursue this. So I started polishing it up a little bit, started thinking if I wanted to do anything with it. I contacted one publisher, and that was University Press of Mississippi, and they accepted pretty quickly and said, yes, we definitely want to publish this book. They've been marvelous ever since in their support of us. And so after that, I started polishing it. I sent the draft in. They did some editing of it, which now I know how all my students felt all those years when I would, say, yeah, well, you need to change this, and they would say, well, I like it the way it is. Well, sorry, that's not going to work, not with me as your teacher, and so I kind of felt that, although to be honest, there were very few revisions because I am an English teacher and because I am a control freak and because I am very careful with my writing. There were probably 3 or 4 things. They didn't like my overuse of the semicolon, but that was our main point of contention. That's always been my favorite punctuation, is the semicolon. Just ask any of my students. So anyway, it went very smoothly, and it was released in February of this year. I came on a whirlwind tour in March in Mississippi and reconnected. The book is now in its 3rd printing at University Press, which I'm very proud of that. I'm not sure what the future holds on this. I've written a 2nd book now, which is fiction, but it's also set in the Delta. And what have I done with it? Absolutely nothing, because I have no idea what I'm doing here. UPM does not do fiction, so I can't use my friends there. So if y'all have any connections, please contact them, because I have none as far as getting things published or getting movies made or anything like that, because everybody says this should be a movie. That's what they say when they read it, because there's a lot here. So that's kind of where I am now. In the whirlwind tour, I did 22 events in 28 days, which was exhausting at my age, as you can imagine, from all over, from Memphis all the way down to Pass Christian. And it was so wonderful seeing people again. And like Representative Bowen, who was very, very much, he's here today, and he was very much a part of our getting the appellation of origin. The Mississippi Delta still holds the 2nd largest appellation of origin for winemaking in the United States, only outnumbered by one other one. And Sam, with a lot of other work from other people, including Larry Speaks, who was the White House press secretary during that time, they all helped us get this designation that Sam worked very hard to recognize the Mississippi Delta as an official wine growing area. This is a really big deal. And we did have that for the last few years, which really helped with marketing and other things. During that time, we had also developed all kind of gourmet foods. We still have the wassail, the spiced wine mix that we sell all over the country. It's called Rocky Mountain Wassail Spice Blend. We still sell that. But all the other things have kind of faded away as far as our products that we did during that time. So now I find myself at the age of 71 with a kind of a new career, I guess. I don't know where I'm going to go with it, if anywhere. I am, my idea of fun is just sitting at my dining room table and writing, I enjoy it very much. That's where I get my flow. I know we all have one thing that we do that makes us lose track of time, whether it's a sport or woodworking or sewing, and this is kind of what I love to do. But it's just been a wonderful experience. I just talked to the people at the Mississippi Film Institute a while ago, and they're going to try to help me see if there's anybody who might be interested. Obviously, I would love for it to be a Mississippian. After all this happened, we were approached by an author from Canada who is a renowned author who wanted to do the book at that time. This would have been probably around 95, something like that. And as he stayed at our house for a week, and we did it, and it was sounded pretty good. And then towards the end, I was kind of picking up that he was going to paint Mississippi in a very negative light. So I said, no, that is not what I want to do. I said, nobody's had more support than we have. That's not where I want to go with this. So we put the stop on that. Why did it take me 30 years to write this, 30 years and some change to write this? It was because a lot of it was just a lack of courage. As long as Ray Russell was still around, there were times I would go out and wonder if I was going to see him in my yard or see him sitting out in the car out front. A lot of it was that. A lot of it was I just wanted to put it behind me. Excuse me. Over the years, we had found where he had turned his terrorist tactics on other neighbors nearby. Another neighbor of his, they were also forced from their home when he used them as target practice when they drove past the house. So he didn't change much, but I had hoped that at some point, maybe he would. Maybe he and his father would have some sort of epiphany that this is not how you should live your life, that this isn't helpful for anyone, including them. And then in 2015, I got a letter sitting in our mailbox from Dr. Tony Scarborough, who is a physics professor at Delta State, with whom we were very good friends. And it was just a tiny little article saying that there was a triple murder in Merigold. And I read it, and it was the murder of Ray Russell, his father, and his wife in their own home by their nephew, who had been born 2 weeks after the break-in, 25 years earlier. When I read that, because I've given this a lot of thought, my first reaction, of course, was shock. My second reaction was I felt this little piece of fear that I didn't even know I still had kind of fly away. I had no idea that I still was afraid of him after 25 years, but I was. He was, as I said, he was murdered by his own nephew, who was 25 at the time, obviously, and who will be in parchment, for the rest of his life. He got a life sentence for this. That was also swept under the rug very, very quickly. My friends in Merigold, I would write and say, what happened? And they said, we don't know what you're talking about. Merigold's a small town. It was totally swept under the rug. And we did not know why. At that point, it was just, that's weird. But, I was busy. So, excuse me, guys, I've got allergy here. Drink a little water. Thank you. So anyway, we had gone on with our life by that time. But the thing that I am very proud of is I had no sense of schadenfreude, no sense of I'm glad this happened to him. I'm glad he got his at the end. He got his reckoning. None of those feelings. Actually, I was just shocked and sorry that he had not turned his life around at some point, because by that time he was in his 50s. He was 27 when all this happened. I'm real proud that I didn't have those feelings. And so that was what I wanted to convey in the book. This is just a tragedy any way you look at it. In the very end of my book, I talk about multi-generational trauma. How we grow up as children at the table and we hear stories that our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents, if we're lucky, tell of our family that came before us. My family, it was always sitting around the table talking about the joys and the successes and the losses. I didn't come from a wealthy family. It was about as middle class as you could be. My mom was a special ed teacher. But I did grow up in a house full of hope. Ray Russell grew up in a house of despair, and not financially. They were fine. They had a big farm. But no curiosity to ever go anywhere or see anything or talk to people who weren't part of your tribe, you know. And it's just a tragedy all the way around, and I talk about it at the very end of the book. You know, I'm grateful for that, but these kitchen table conversations drive the way we feel about things a lot more than we realize, and sometimes we get stuck. And some of us are lucky and some of us aren't. And so I just kind of wrap it up like I wish that I had had the grace to figure that out at that age, at that time, had the grace to figure out that he was a product of his environment, which was a rough, somebody's always out to get you mentality, paranoid mentality. But I didn't. And so things unfolded the way they did. And now when I go around with my book and people will come up and say, I just can't believe the things you went through. It's terrible. And then I find out later in the conversation they'd lost a child or something to cancer. And I think, man, this is nothing compared to what you've been through. We all have tragedies. If you have something, just write about it. Write about it honestly. My book's very honest. I talk about the things I'm very ashamed of that I've done, such as during the desegregation when I was a senior at high school at Greenville High School. I wasn't mean to anybody, but I certainly didn't make anybody feel welcome when we all went through the upheaval. I've gotten a lot of perspective from the black people in my life who I went to high school with whom I've remained in touch, especially two ladies that are my age. I've learned so much writing this book about things I could have done differently. And I'm not really ashamed of much that I've done. I'm more ashamed of the things that I haven't done in relation to reaching out to Ray, trying to help him instead of ignoring his situation and I guess fostering some resentment that we never knew was there. I don't know. You know, but in the long run, we ended up really, really fine. You know, we're fine. Our kids are doing well. They're successful. I have 4 grandchildren. They're very naughty, but they're reasonably intelligent, you know. They're kind of the joy of my life, as a lot of you can identify with, I'm sure. So that's, but my book it's a lot of things. It goes into the history of the Delta. Sam's grandfather was the deputy sheriff of Bolivar County during the 20s. His name was Tom Rushing. He was one of the ones designated to keep the people on the levee after the flood of 27 with a shotgun, make them stay on the levee. We grew up hearing those stories from Big Tom. He was very close friends with the blues singer Charlie Patton. There's a song about Big Tom called the Tom Rushing Blues, about when Big Tom would arrest Charlie Patton and put him in jail for stirring up not good trouble like John Lewis says, but bad trouble. You know, he was a character. And so it was it's a book that goes into all of these different areas woven in with the story of what happened to the Winery Rushing. So I think that's pretty much it. Are there any questions that anyone has? I think Chris is going to hook you up with a microphone, is my understanding. And in the meantime, thank you for being such a great audience. Thank you.
Anyone has a question, you can raise your hand. We'll bring the microphone to you.
Just wonder what. I just wonder what's going on with the winery now. Do the bushes still there, or will they ever burn out, or just go
no. Right after we moved, you know how it is in the Mississippi Delta. If you leave the farm, you're out of the picture. The farm was never in our name. It was in Sam's father's name. So when we left, he gave it to one of his other children. So we now, and that includes our house, the winery, the tea room, the vineyard, and the other acreage there. So that belongs to her. The winery, she's a big hunter, so she's pretty much let it grow up. As you can imagine, it's some of the best hunting in the Delta, with 30-something acres of muscadines. That's their hangout. That's their happy place, you know, for the deer. So she enjoys doing that. And then the side on of the river where we were has been sold to another man who's a very nice guy, and he lives in our old house. And the winery itself, though, to be honest, has completely fallen in. The tea room is overcome by cobwebs. We went there in March when we were in the Delta. It's sad because the beautiful wallpaper is still there. The dental molding is still there. Everything, the old fans that I'd gotten from Memphis from the depot when they closed it down, all of that's still there, but it's completely caved in. You know, the mice and rats, squirrels, raccoons, they've all taken it over. So it's pretty depressing. When we went back with our daughter and our son in March, they flew in for the signing in the Delta. It was depressing to them, but it really wasn't to me. And I thought that was interesting because I don't know why it wasn't to me. I can why it was Sam, because Sam had worked so hard, and he's 7th generation Mississippian, and that farm had been in his family for a long, long time. So it was very much more difficult for him. For me, it was like I've always been kind of a move-on type of person, you know, and it's kind of like, well, this was an interesting aspect of my life, but, you know, it's over. And I miss the people here, but we landed in a good spot, too, so we're okay. Any other questions? Over here?
First, I wanted to say, you're going to make me cry.
I
The
don't want
grace
that.
that you are showing
Oh, well,
when you talk about this person is amazing.
thank you.
Just
Thank
amazing.
you.
And then my question was very similar to the one that this gentleman just asked you. When was the first time you came back to Mississippi? I know you had family here, but when was the first time you came back after you left to move to Colorado? And what was the first visit back like? Did you go back to the property then?
No.
Or?
It was too soon at that point. We came back I would say about 6 or 7 years later. But we did not go out. We intentionally did not go back out there. It was still too fresh in our minds. And then I think we went back about 4 years ago for the first time to the place and took some pictures and some old trees that Sam had planted when we were there that were from walnut seeds from my great-grandfather's home in the Ozarks. So there's still a lot of emotion there as far as that's concerned. But we probably would not have had the courage to drive down that road until Ray was gone. To be honest, we just didn't know. Part of us just wanted to put it behind us. Part of us was fear. I wish I had a more noble answer than that, but it was just raw fear for a long time. And but we would come back and see friends, and we still have a lot of friends in the Delta and also all over the state. But it was kind of hard to come back, and you know, it's one of those times there are people you want to see. You want to see everybody, but you can't. So you just kind of have to handpick the ones that you could reconnect with. But it was this last time we went, I think, because I guess when somebody first asked me, was this a healing experience for you? You know, it wasn't really. I think I was over it by the time I wrote this book, but it has taught me a lot about myself, and I think it has helped me heal in that sense of being able to, unlike Thomas Wolfe said, you can't go home again. I think you can. It's just going to be different. It's just going to be different. Anything else?
I too am very touched by
Thank
how
you.
positive you are and how you've been able to
Thank
get through this.
Thank you.
I'm not quite that way. I am still researching. I've read your book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm researching what happened in
Yeah.
Bolivar County
Yeah.
that made that trial come out the way it did. I even went to the obituaries for those 3 people.
Yes.
The Bolivar Sheriff's Office is the recipient
Yes.
of memorials. So do you know anybody that can answer my question?
I do not. And to be honest with you, I didn't know any of this until it happened and until I wrote the book and came back. I was at Cotton Row Books in Cleveland, and the line was literally down the block, so I couldn't talk to anybody. But I would have sign this book. By the way, I was blah blah lawyer, blah blah, you know, blah blah this and blah blah that. And I said, you know, I wanted to say, wait, let's go have a cup of coffee, but I couldn't, you know, and I didn't even get their names, so I didn't even know who these people were. But after this, one guy who's a lawyer in Cleveland, I knew his dad. He said, you need to read the obituary, Ray's obituary. because we were wondering, why in the world did he get off? Why was he just charged with $401? And since then, I've learned that there was some very shady things going on in the sheriff's department. And the thing that really, but I don't have really anything concrete, they won't send us the transcripts, as I mentioned. They said there was a fire there. There was never a fire at that. I don't know what's going on there. But when Ray and his father and wife were shot in their own home, it did say in that little blurb, all cash memorials should be sent to Bolivar County Sheriff's Department. So I don't know. That was 8 years ago. I don't know, and to be honest, I don't know if I want to know. I kind of do. I'm kind of curious, but that's just not how I roll, in a way. But boy, I've got some friends that are trying to find out too. Have you had any luck? I'm just curious with your research. Yeah, they said it was pretty much swept under the rug, the entire thing, as was the murder 25 years later. Just very little anyone knows of any of it. So I suspect there's something, but I don't know. I may be wrong, and I certainly don't want to defame anyone who's not involved. So I don't know. It's curious and curiouser, as they say.
Thank you.
Okay, is that it?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you.
Very quick question. How long did your business last from the time you started it to the time it was destroyed? How long did it last? And why would somebody destroy your business? Did they have a reason? Did the person who destroyed your business, did they have a reason for destroying it? Or is it some
Okay.
mental condition or somebody?
I think to answer your first question, 14 years. We opened in 77 and closed December 24th of 1990. So really almost 15 years, to answer your first question. The second question is, I think his reason was that we had fired him and that word got out that he was a drug dealer, and I'm sure his entire life was pulled out from under him when all of that happened. And so and as I was talking about the multi-generational trauma, I think that revenge was his only motive, was revenge, and staying out of prison. That would be my two guesses. Mental illness, if so, it was probably caused by any drug usage he might have done. But when he was working for us, he was highly functional as far as, repartee with customers and answering questions. That's why he worked for us for 2.5 years. He was very knowledgeable and very, very helpful and very endearing to a lot of people. So that's why it really caught us off guard. Yes, sir. I guess. Oh, here, okay.
You may not know the answer to this, and I can understand why. Do you know if he tormented other residents of the area after you left?
Well, I do know that he did, because I mentioned the people who moved away later because he was shooting into the cab of their truck. I understand he would just kind of stalk the community, and he's just one of those people who was always looking for trouble, looking for things to stir up. They had this, well, yeah, they arrested him. It went to trial and he was found not guilty, These, no, not to my knowledge, but that's an interesting question, because we wouldn't have known, especially if he had connections in the sheriff's department, There was someone that said that there was a murder of a woman in a ditch. That was, I just don't have the tools to answer that accurately. There's all kind of rumors going around, and you never know what's true and what's not. Yes, sir.
Muscadine,
Oh, yes, ma'am.
muscadine grapes are not usually used for wine.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, what did your wine taste like? Did you have white and reds?
Yes, we did.
I tasted a muscadine wine in Natchez
Yeah.
decades ago, and it
Yeah.
was yuck.
Yeah. Okay. Well, when we started, we knew we had to grow muscadines because that's the only grape that's going to grow in this in Mississippi. The grapes they use in Europe and in California, in New York, a lot of these places are called Vitis vinifera. Those are the grapes, Chardonnay, the grapes you're familiar with. You know, Pinot Noir, Pinot Grigio, Cabernet Sauvignon. Those are all grapes that are the vinifera. We knew in the Delta we had to grow Vitis rotundifolia, which are muscadines. We had a lot of repair work to do as far as reputation was concerned. Because up until we came along, the only muscadine, they would make it, it was very sweet and very strong. They would add alcohol. It was fortified wine, is what they called it, where you drank it more to get a buzz than anything else. So we had a lot of unlearning for the people to do. But we did come out with some very dry wines. We had a dry red and a dry white wine. We had dessert wines as well. We had semi-sweet wines. But our intention from the get-go was to produce table wines. So when you think of what you used to sneak in the closet and drink out of a ball jar, a canning jar, it was nothing like that. Was it something like a French or California? No, it wasn't like that either. We were very proud of it, and apparently it had some legs. We won the awards, but it's kind of hard to be. It's kind of like your own children. It's hard to be objective about it. I do know that we sold everything we made every year, and the support was tremendous. And these were from people who were, enophiles, people who were wine lovers, and I'm sure it didn't appeal to everyone. Nothing does. So, yeah.
My
Yes.
book club just read your book the
Oh,
first of
good.
this month.
Good.
And there are 10 women that are much, much more outraged than you were, I have to say. We were ready to take it to another level.
Yeah.
We didn't make any calls because
Yeah.
we didn't know about it at the time.
Yeah.
But I did look up I looked up the obituaries, which I just thought were ridiculous. I mean, you would have thought those people, well, according to the obituaries, they were stand-up people in the church, every
Yeah.
bit of what they said.
Yeah.
But my heart did bleed for you, and of course, like you said, in Mississippi, we take care of each other, so we all felt so much indignation.
Thank you.
And not only in the book, but as you're standing up here, I admire you tremendously
Thank
for
you.
turning that other cheek and moving on, and y'all had a wonderful life since then.
Thank you. I wouldn't say we turned the other cheek. I had some real ugly thoughts in my head, I can tell you that. I really did, but our choices were very limited without being a bad person. And we certainly didn't want to go there. So yeah, there's a lot of indignant people that have read my book. I've gotten letters from everything ranging from a guy who just got out of prison to a Catholic priest, to all kind of people that said that the book moved them. I think resilience was the thing that they took away from that, is that you can come back from something like that, but I'm no wonderful person. I don't want you to think I am. I taught high school for 20 years. How can you be humble? I mean, you can't, you have to fight, in a lot of ways. You have to go out there and put it out there. And I hope that I know, I was speaking to somebody about, everybody says this needs to be a movie, this needs to be a movie. If so, I want it to be like a Tate Taylor type of movie that's a Mississippian that does it. I'm not going to let anybody go and portray Mississippi in a light that's not how I experienced it. Everybody experiences it differently. I understand that. But I didn't. It was love and support for me, and a lot of learning, and I wouldn't give up growing up here for anything in the world. And when people read my book from other areas, they want to come here now. So it had the effect that I wanted. So hopefully it'll continue to. But thank you.
If you too would like to be indignant, we have copies of the book for sale right over here. If you would like to
And I'll
express your
sign.
outrage to Di, she'll be
Yeah.
glad to sign a copy at this
I
table.
will.
Come and say, hey, Thank you all for being here today. Don't forget to come back next week for David Allen Burt and catch the exhibits upstairs. Keep going one last time. Die rushing today.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.